So part of the welcome for Startup Grind is a standing ovation. So could everyone help me please welcome Adrienne and Derek Wissner from Bridal. So, hello.
Hello.
So here we are. How are you two doing tonight?
Doing very well. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. I know you've been a part of this before, so you've kind of seen what happens. So just kind of start at the beginning and go from there. So how about starting with Adrienne? Just maybe a little bit of background, because I know you're the one who even had this idea to begin with. So even before you got to that point, like what's kind of your background, schooling, where you grew up, kind of thing?
Okay. I am from the Southwest Michigan area, so I grew up in Stevensville, St. Joe, and went to high school there. Decided to pursue a degree in biology and chemistry at Hope College. So that was my background. I wanted to go into environmentally friendly agriculture, landscaping, that kind of thing, go down that path. And then about 6 months out of college, decided to open up a side business selling dresses. I've always had a passion for unique gowns and searching for something unique, so I figured I'd do that as a side business while I pursued my real career, and it ended up being my real career and has since brought us to Kalamazoo, and we opened a business in Kalamazoo 10 years ago this month, so we have a birthday this month as well.
Wow. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
We'll share the cake.
But that sounds good. So in opening up the side business, like what was kind of the model for it? Because I mean, it was a lot different than what it is now.
Yep, it's very different. Our current business, we're the owners of Memories Bridal and Evening Wear, and we're a full service bridal salon. So anyone that goes shopping for a wedding dress, that's the kind of store that we have. When we originally started, we were mainly doing prom and pageant dresses and some other the bride, and we did a lot of dresses on consignment. That's how we originally started. We were a resale consignment store, so we were a very small store for people on a tighter budget, but to give them some great options. So it's very different than what we are today, but it was a great model for us to get started on a very low budget ourselves. I did it all straight out of my savings as a college graduate. It was 6 months out of school. Didn't have a whole lot of savings, but did it all straight out of savings. Didn't have to take a loan because we started as a consignment resale, started so small and grew slowly from there. It worked out really well for us.
So Derek, how did you fit in? Like, what was your background, and at what point did you enter into this picture?
Well, I met Adrienne. Prior to meeting Adrienne, I was a social worker. I went to school at Western. I went to school at Central. I went to graduate school at Western, studying social work administration and nonprofit management, and moved out east. I was taking kids backpacking in New Jersey along the Appalachian Trail as my job, and then I came back and ran some summer camps, ended up at Pretty Lake Vacation Camp. I was a camp director out there for several years, and that's when I met Adrienne. I moved down to St. Joe to live with Adrienne. I was working at the Lincoln Crisis Center, which is a emergency shelter, I suppose, for at-risk kids. While Adrienne was doing her dress shop gig, I suppose. We were also working as at a greenhouse as well. And I kind of just kind of watched, I guess, at first. When she needed help, I'd help when needed. A couple of years in, you decided to expand into a larger location in Stevensville. So I helped with that build out, and she dropped the consignment routes and just went, it was all full retail at that point, and brought on Bridal. And that's kind of when I became a little bit more involved, and then we decided to kind of make the plunge and open up a shop here in Kalamazoo. And when that happened, I helped kind of scout out the building, and we found our space and, negotiated that and whatnot, and I was very involved in that. And her dad and I actually, the day after Labor Day, in 2006, within the day after Labor Day in 2006, gutted the building and renovated the space and opened December 3rd or 6th or something like that, the first week of December. And we got through the Christmas holiday and we got to January or so, and Adrienne kind of was asking, so when are you going to get a real job again? When are you going to get a job to pay the bills essentially? And I'm not quite ready. Let me just stay here a little longer. We'll get things settled, and by about March or April, she's like, all right, you're not leaving, because business had just really taken off, and we were quite busy, and I've just kind of been around ever since, and it's been a full-time job for both of us since that point. So
how did you divide up your roles? Like, what is it that each of you do for the business as it's been developing?
I basically manage the back end. I'm business operations. I deal with the financials, facilities, analytics, anything kind of forward-thinking and whatnot is usually kind of driven, by me. And Adrienne's really she's the brand spokesperson. She does all the buying, the look, the feel of the store. That's Adrienne. We have a full-time manager who manages the store operations. And she manages a staff of, it ebbs and flows throughout the season, but probably about a dozen on average. We have a full-time purchasing manager who actually purchases the products and works with the vendors. We have 2 assistant managers who are prom shop managers, which we can get into later as well. And that's kind of a back-of-the-house seamstress as well. So in a way, Adrienne kind of oversees all of them with regards to the operations, but she's really more, if you were to kind of really simplify it, Adrienne's kind of the face of the store, and I'm kind of the operations, I suppose.
So what are kind of the challenges that you've had as it's been growing?
Well, I think one of our biggest challenges is this is not either of our backgrounds. We both have a passion for entrepreneurship, and we both really love owning our own business. And before we started the bridal shop, Derek had his own sort of side business, and I always knew no matter what career I wanted to go into that I wanted to own my own business. So we both love being our own bosses, but prior to opening the shop, did we have any experience running a retail store? No. Most of what we're doing, we learn through experience, and we're self-taught with everything, so that can be a challenge, and it can be really scary, not knowing if we're making the right decision or not. I think that's been one of our biggest things, but we've done really well at taking small steps, small calculated steps, and figuring things out as we go. To me, that's the biggest challenge, is just not having that roadmap already laid out for us, having to figure it out as we go.
So when you moved to Kalamazoo, was that the only shop, or was there still a second one somewhere else?
When we opened our store in Kalamazoo, we also still had our store down in Stevensville, and so we ran the 2 stores for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, that's about that.
Our
I think it was 2 seasons.
Our plan was to keep both stores running, but once we got up to Kalamazoo, we saw the great potential up here, and our location up here was a wonderful location. We're right in downtown, beautiful space, and we ended up seeing a lot of our customers that would have been shopping at the Stevensville store driving to Kalamazoo to shop for those same items. So we both wanted to live in Kalamazoo eventually, so we ended up personally moving up here, and because of that, and because we saw most of our shoppers willing to drive to Kalamazoo anyways, we decided to close the Stevensville store and focus on Kalamazoo because the potential was so much better here.
So, and I know that, so kind of speaking of the community aspect of it, so is the idea of what you're doing in consignment, you kind of have kept it sort of, like you have a project that you do here.
Yep, we don't do consignment. We haven't done that for a long while, so we're just a regular retail store. But we, from the very beginnings of starting the business, one of the things that I was very passionate about was being able to help girls who weren't able to afford the same luxuries as their peers. So when we were originally started our business in Stevensville, we started an event called the Cinderella Project. Similar events happen across the country. We didn't make up the idea, but we started one in our area where we would collect donated prom and pageant and bridesmaids dresses and give those away to girls that couldn't afford to buy their own prom dress, so that those girls could go to prom just like all their friends could. And when we came up to Kalamazoo, we started that event up in Kalamazoo as well. So this will be, 2017 will be our 11th year hosting the Cinderella Project. We have about 2,000 dresses in storage that we bring out every year to give away for free. Any girl that can't afford to purchase her dress for prom can come in. We will give her a dress free of charge and any other accessories that we have to go with it. And last year we gave away about 200 prom dresses, and we do that every year. It's a really great part about our business, that we can give back in that way and help those girls.
How does so what is a day like? You probably have different kinds of days.
A day for me right now, I'm not in the front of the store anymore. When we originally started, I was on the floor all the time, selling dresses, managing girls, doing the day-to-day stuff. Since then, I've been taking a little bit of a step back, but my job now mostly involves helping troubleshoot problems at the store. So if things come up, I'm a great source for the staff to help figure things out. Constantly thinking about how we can improve things. So if problems come up, let's not just solve the problem, let's make sure it never happens again and get some procedures into place for that. I do all the buying, so I do a lot of looking at our inventory, looking at what's going on with our designers, trying to make sure that we have the right stock available. I do all the community outreach stuff too. So whenever someone needs a partner, bridal shop partner, dress shop partner, I'm the one that they look to. So I do a lot of talking with other vendors, working with bridal shows, helping photographers with photo shoots. That's what most of my stuff is personally. And the social media, I really a big part of our social media campaigns too.
Kind of my daily grind is I keep the financials, so that's kind of part of the daily chores. But usually I'm often the guy that does the bigger projects. So I'll often have one project going at a time, or sometimes 3 or 4 at a time. Right now we're redeveloping a website, so that's a big project. Right now we're also converting to a new point of sale system, so that's taking up a lot of time right now for both of us, not just me, but right now we're getting ready to launch 2 prom shops in the next month. So we're getting ready to build out on those and preparing for those. So, I guess my day-to-day type stuff is, kind of keeping the bills paid and keeping the financials running and whatnot. But a lot of it, though, is really just kind of the major projects, I guess. So we also, frankly, we've also had 3 children in the last 4 years. So our daily life is a little different than a lot of office jobs. Right now, our daughters work with us every day. She was here at the last meeting with me, so it's kind of a unique advantage of being self-employed, is that we can bring our kids to work if we need to and stuff. So, and sometimes work from home or whatnot. So.
I've seen them on the website. I don't think your daughter was on there yet, but the boys were both on the website with titles.
Yeah. Our daughter's only 4 months, so she'll be on the new website.
Yeah, we're waiting for that one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Though I know there were a lot more stories, but I guess, besides the challenge, maybe what's something that you've learned, since you've been doing this for 10 years, and you've accepted that challenge of not having that path laid out. So what are some of the things that you've learned from going this route?
Personally, Derek and I make a really nice team because I tend to be very cautious and a little slower to make big changes, and Derek is much more adventurous and more of a risk taker. So working together, that has helped me quite a bit, be able to take those kind of risks, and I balance him out as well. So that's one thing. We wouldn't have such a successful Kalamazoo store if he didn't convince us to take that risk. So that's a big thing that I feel like I've learned on a personal level.
On the flip side, I like to think of us as kind of the gas and Adrienne's the brakes in some ways. And if it was me, we would have been bankrupt 9 years ago. So I think that's one of the ways that we do balance each other out. I kind of, in some ways, push the business, and Adrienne kind of pulls the reins in a little bit, and then somewhere in the middle we find a compromise that's smart. So sometimes it sways a little bit one way or the other, but I think it's smart to have people that both have different strengths as well. There's things that I do that Adrienne doesn't excel in, and there's things that she does that I cannot do. So it's good to have a partner that you can, that's not just like you.
I think one thing that's really helped us be successful, I know personally I come from a science background, so I am very used to applying a solution, seeing how it worked. If it didn't work well, analyzing that, changing it for the next time. That's how I approach everything, and I think that's helped us quite a bit, not knowing what we're doing, be able to look at things analytically and change and change our direction as we go, versus not looking at things with that same mentality. I think that's really helped us sort of navigate and figure things out as we go. Learning the ins and outs of customer service and what we really do need to do to have a great environment for our employees to work in. We are our own biggest critics. We think there's so much room for improvement for our store. I apologize to my staff that things are such a mess, it's going to get better. And I was just having a staff meeting with girls 2 days ago, and they said this is the most organized place we have ever worked. You're apologizing for it, but this is fantastic. So I think us always driving to try to be better and looking at things really analytically has helped us figure those things out as we go, even though we didn't know how to do them in the beginning. So that's been great.
On the flip side, I don't want to say on the flip side, but to counter that, it wasn't perfect at the beginning by any stretch of imagination, and I think that can sometimes be a real hindrance too, to wait until things are perfect. If you have an idea, just do it. Start small and just do it, and make it better the next time, and learn from it, and grow, and reinvest, and just let it get better and better. Sometimes I think we all probably fall prey to just waiting for everything to be perfect before we take a leap, or until we take that next step. And it's not the way I think, and it's definitely not the way we do business. We just kind of make our best effort and put it forward and tweak it and figure it out as we go along.
So in any of those decisions, either ones that are daily or ones that have kind of swayed one way or another, is there anything that stands out that would that was like a particular lesson or just nice story?
I'm sure Derek has a different story, so I'll let him think of his. But the thing that sticks out to me the most is something that happened when we just had our Stevensville store. The idea of opening a Kalamazoo store hadn't really come up yet. Still very new, but I was making my career out of this store, and a new competitor opened in the neighboring town, and I was scared out of my mind. I thought I was going to have to close up shop. You know, what can I do? I'm just a small hole-in-the-wall store run by this 23-year-old girl. I thought for sure that was going to be the end, and I was really upset and panicked about it. Derek helped calm me down, and it was, you know, the lesson learned with that one is basically don't worry about what your competitors are doing. Do what you do really, really well, and just keep trucking on that path. And 2 years later, she's closed, she's out of business, and we have this beautiful store in Kalamazoo and have made a career out of this and are helping make careers for the rest of our staff. And, you know, it was because we stayed focused on what we do and don't worry about everyone else as much. That was a lesson that I take to heart.
Do you have one, Derek?
I'm sure I can think of several different stories. I don't know which ones would be relevant. I mean, I think that's interesting. I haven't thought about that in a long time. There has been several competitors that have come and gone, and every one kind of gives you a little bit of anxiety. It's like, oh God, but there's been several that have gone as well, which has been, you know, kind of a nice feeling. I guess the prom shop would be one of the things that we didn't really know was if it was going to work or not. And what the prom shop is basically, prom business is about 30% of our business or so in Kalamazoo here. So we do a lot of bridal gowns, we do some pageants, we do prom, tuxedos, and that prom is a very focused market. It's, you know, January through April. So what we did is we decided, like, hey, we think we understand how to sell prom dresses, so we rented out some space in the Rivertown Crossings Mall. And it was seasonal space, so we were basically there month to month. We had a 4-month commitment, I suppose, and we did a really inexpensive build-out. And I think we spent maybe $1,500, to build out the space, just put in a lot of sweat equity, and sold prom dresses. And the idea was, we'll see if this works, and whatever doesn't sell, we'll just bring back and absorb into the shop. And it worked really well. So the next year we did it again. And then this year we're doing it in 2 malls. We're doing it in the Rivertown Crossings Mall up in Grand Rapids, and we're also doing it in Crossroads here. So it's one of those, it's kind of how we operate. It's like, okay, how do we test this? Can we do another store? How can we do it on the cheap? Limit our risk. What is the risk here? The risk is we're going to have inventory that we didn't really expect, but we can still absorb it. We'll be fine. The risk is really the $1,000, $1,500 in build-out cost and the time. It's not going to bankrupt us. We're okay. But the upside's pretty good. And then it worked, and we tweaked some things the second year to make it a little bit better, and now we're doing it again. And hopefully next year we'll do it. We'll do it again. One thing we did early on that didn't work makes total logic sense. People actually say it occasionally. Why don't you rent bridesmaids dresses? Or rent bridal gowns. Logical. You only wear it once. Especially for bridesmaids. It's. Why not try that? And we did. We brought them in, and it makes sense logically, and nobody rented them. So it was kind of one of those ideas where you test it, and it just fell flat on its face. It just didn't work at all. I had to pull the plug.
That's interesting, because tuxedos are rented, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
It must be more of the emotional connection to the gowns.
I think men and women are different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't hear about men passing along their outfit to somebody, but that's something that you hear women talk about as a tradition. So that's interesting. So since you bring up finances a lot, and I mean, you started the first store with savings and consignment, so I mean, there's a lot of bootstrapping. As you expanded, was it still always out of money that you already had, or did you ever have to take out loans too, or have you?
We did one major expansion down in the Stevensville St. Joe area, and that was completely out of savings. It wasn't until we opened our Kalamazoo store that personally I got my first loan. That was the first loan I had had for anything in my life. But we were doing something on a much larger scale, so that was the first time that that we did that for the business, or that I did that personally. But we needed that leverage around here.
And that was for essentially leasehold improvements. We didn't buy the building outright, but we had an option to purchase the building, so it was kind of it was a lease with an option essentially, and we gutted the building and built it out as if we owned it, and then we exercised that option a couple years later. So you know, that initial loan when we moved to Kalamazoo here, you know, it was roughly $70,000. We paid that off a couple of years later, and we did another improvement a couple of years after that and redid the facade of the building. So the entire exterior of the building has been renovated. We did work with Downtown Kalamazoo Incorporated and used some grant money to help with that. They subsidized part of that as well, which is nice. And all that's paid off as well. The only debt that we have now for the building essentially is a mortgage for the building that we have. So we do have a line of credit, I suppose, but
That's good. Okay.
so again, it's just it's starting small and reinvesting. You know, reinvesting in the operations and reinvesting in the things that work, and the things that don't, just clip off and let them die, and just keep going and, you know, keep doing what works. So.
Yeah, I like that lesson. And so what about, so at the consignment shop, was anyone else working with you, or at what point did you expand in employees beyond the two of you?
When we first started, our original building was 625 square feet, smaller than this room here, was my first store. And from the very get-go, I had employees because I was also working a full-time job. So I had a full-time job, part-time business, and I think had multiple employees from the very beginning. Fun story, my second employee I ever hired caught embezzling from the business the first weekend. So note to self, watch your employees well. So we did start with employees pretty early on. I don't think it was until probably 6 months after we opened the original store. I quit my full-time job and really invested my time into the business itself, and purposely found other jobs that I could do in the off hours of the business. So I was a morning breakfast waitress for quite a while, so I could work in the morning and then go open the store at noon and then work all day at the store. So we have had employees from the very beginning. It wasn't until we opened our Kalamazoo store that we started having a full-time manager. But even then, I was still actively involved with the stores. When we had 2 stores running, I ran one, had a manager run the other one. Probably within the past, we've been open in Kalamazoo for 10 years, probably the past 6 or 7 that I haven't been on the floor all the time. I'm always available to the staff to help out the face of the store, but I'm not on the floor selling dresses. That's not my personal forte, so I let my staff do that, and I do the behind the scenes stuff.
Which part is your favorite?
I love doing the buying. I love going to market and seeing everything that the designers have come out with and being able to select what we bring into our store. I think that's really great. I think it's really neat when people ask what the trends for the season are, and when you sit back and you think about it, I'm helping decide those trends. You know, people in Kalamazoo wouldn't be wearing floral print prom dresses if stores didn't buy floral print prom dresses. So I think that's sort of neat that you get to affect the trends, you get to choose things that will help make women feel beautiful. So that's my absolute favorite part, is doing the buying, seeing all the variety that's out there, and just working with the dresses. I think that's absolutely fabulous. I love it.
And I was just thinking, when you were talking about the other stores opening, so what is the uniqueness part of your store?
I think there's a couple of things that set our store apart. One, from the very beginning, we've tried to offer dresses that are very unique, that you don't see other places. I think that's something that people really valued from the very beginning of our business. When I was in high school going to dances, I was very passionate about finding a dress that no one else had. One of my first dresses I ever wore was from Goodwill. It was a vintage, very unique dress that no one else in high school would ever have thought about wearing, but it was something that stood out, and I liked offering that in our stores. So I think that's one thing that helped us stand out in the very beginning, was having a unique selection of dresses. And the other thing that I think is really powerful and plays very true today is the fact that we are an enjoyable place to shop. We tend to have a younger vibe to our staff. We try to not be stuffy. In the past, a lot of bridal shops tended to be a little more stuffy. If they were higher end, they would feel snooty. Or if they were older shops, they would feel sort of dowdy and grandma-y, I guess. So we tried to really go for that younger vibe, and from the very beginning, it was always really important to me that people felt welcome in the store. If someone came in and didn't find something that they liked, I always wanted them to still feel good about themselves when they left. So it's been really important to me that people feel welcome and are treated well in our store. So having a unique selection of dresses and treating our customers really well and being really nice to people. It's really sad how that can be a differentiating factor for a business, is that you're nice to people, but that's something that's been very important from us from the beginning.
And even because I thought like the website is, or the saying is like, don't dress like her.
Yep, don't dress like her, dress like you, and that sort of goes back to the unique dresses. Don't be afraid to be yourself and show your own personal style, and we like to think that we have the dresses that enable girls to do that, so they don't have to feel like they look like everybody else. They can show people who they are and be proud of that. I think that's fabulous.
Okay. I'm going to go to the audience, so if somebody has a question, I'm going to switch up the mics. Does somebody have a question?
So, Derek, how did you learn how to do the business financial statements, and also what were some of the challenges you came across with that?
I'm self-taught in a lot of ways. I took a class at KBCC. I just read some books. I'm being honest. I started doing bookkeeping when I owned some rental properties. When I was working at one of the summer camps I was working at, I started buying rental properties, actually here in my neighborhood. And I just needed to learn how to keep books. So I, kind of QuickBooks for Dummies 101 and whatever, and I did that, and kind of got a little ahead of myself and needed to take an accounting class and learn how that all works. And really the financials that we have in the store now are just kind of self-taught, I suppose. So yeah, it's really part of the job that I really enjoy, and I think it's important to really understand your numbers, and understand where you're making money, where you're not, whether or not an employee is stealing money from you. It's important to know. So I don't know if I'll let that go. Just something I enjoy doing. So.
He's very much a numbers person. When we met, he would do spreadsheets for all of his personal expenditures. He could tell you how much he spent in Subway in a year.
I could tell
We're
you how
not
much I
that bad
spent in
anymore.
2003.
So,
Seriously.
it's his mindset is perfect for that. So it was a natural fit, just learning the ins and outs of stuff, but it's definitely how he thinks.
So starting a business is obviously a challenge. Having a partner makes it more of a challenge, but you guys are married. So how do you guys manage the marriage versus the partnership versus everything else? I mean, what kind of challenges do you guys face that other partners may not?
You notice there might be challenges. I think we do pretty well now. To be honest, it was rough at first. The first couple of years were pretty challenging. It's hard because you're always living it. You know, you go to work together, you leave together, you're at home at night together, but then you wake up and you go back to work the next morning. You know, so you're kind of always immersed in it. So that's one thing. It just kind of, I noticed you hugged your wife just, when you came in. I've been with Adrienne since we woke up this morning. Literally. So it's like there's no, like, hey, let me tell you about what's been happening, because we were there all day. So that's one of the challenges that still exists in some ways. But, we do have very different strengths. So I think one of the things that we learned earlier on was to let each other do our thing. I'm very non-involved in the parts of the business that she does, and she's very non-involved in the parts of the business that I am involved in. And we trust each other to handle those things, and we report back to each other, monthly or so, and to kind of check in to see where things are at and see if there's anything we need help with. But for the most part, we have two different jobs. We just work for the same organization. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, our situation's pretty extreme because not only are we husband and wife, work at the same business, but we share an office. Like, our desks stare at each other, and they have for 10 years. And I think if we have days that we're not working together, it feels weird. It feels so weird. But I think what Derek said about each having our own areas and not invading into that territory is very, very important, especially to me as a woman. It's very easy to give in to somebody and want to be a people pleaser. So having my area that I can do my thing and he can do his thing helps a lot. There are fights. That definitely happens, but we both are working for the good of the business, and with us having that same goal involved, I think it works out pretty well together. It would be nice to have something different to talk about other than the store once in a while, but I guess you take what you can get.
That's why we have children.
Want to ask a different question? Okay. Not related to the first question. Where was David Bridal when you started off, and what role did they play in your business? How did it affect you guys?
When we first started our business, David's Bridal was the big scary thing on the block. That's what David's Bridal was such an intimidating factor to a lot of bridal shops, and that was the beginning of people buying things online as well. So we went through all of those hurdles. When we moved to Kalamazoo, David's Bridal got scared of us. So that was really cool when we started to hear that. It's not as big of an issue anymore, but I think because we've differentiated ourselves so much. We are a very different store than David's. We may have some people that will shop at the same stores, but we have a product that's different than theirs. We have a clientele that's different than theirs. I think if we were trying to pull from the same pool, then that would be really hard. But with competition, you just got to figure out what your niche is and stick with it and not try to delve into their niche. So it hasn't been bad for us.
Okay, so, excuse me. Now that you guys have been doing this for a while and you've done a whole lot of changing from one store, from two stores to one store, do you feel like you have a business model that you can put into other markets? Is that part of your long-range planning, that you're going to open additional stores? Or is this something where you want to eventually move on and start another type of business or move into a different industry as you guys raise your kids and have different time constraints that you want to abide by?
In the beginning of us really working heavily on our business, we did like the idea of branching out into other markets. But since then, we've definitely changed our focus. Personally, I like the idea of doing something really, really well. And maybe that means having one store, but having the most amazing store in Michigan. I would much rather go that route than have 10 stores throughout Michigan. We like our model, and I think it could work other places, but it is so hands-on that I don't know if I would trust putting a bridal shop in the hands of somebody else that I wasn't there to oversee all of the time, because there's so many things that are so important that your customers feel are so important. Replicating the prom store is a different thing. I think that could be cool, but personally I'm more of the mindset of let's figure out how to make this store so amazing that everyone in Michigan will want to drive to us instead of opening up a store all over. But I'll let you take that second question about a different kind of business.
I don't know about a separate kind of business right now. I mean, this is kind of where we're at right now. Where we're at is really trying to just focus on what we're doing and just, you know, it's like Adrienne was saying, just make sure it's as good as it can possibly be. The bridal business is very different than the prom business. The prom business is much more transactional. You come in, you find a nice dress, you leave with a nice dress, you send us a pretty picture. You know, it's a good experience, but it's a couple hours. When a bride comes in, we might work with that same bride for a year, and we work with thousands of them a year. So that's very different and much more difficult to replicate. I don't know if we would really be interested in starting another whole different type of business at this point. But you know, I like real estate. We like renovating properties, so that's something we would probably get into again. That was kind of a business that I had before we started this. So other, you know, kind of more passive businesses perhaps, but probably at this point, probably not a whole other business venture.
Derek's very project oriented, so I think he's looking for his next big project. But yeah, probably not a full-time business, just a side project.
Yeah, and I like to, I think we both are very seasonal in nature. We like to do something really, what works really well for this business is that the busy season's in the winter. So we work really hard from, say, you know, October, November until May. And then things lighten up, you know. Business, it's easy in May. In the summertime, we're just handing dresses off. You know, the gowns have already been purchased. So that's fairly easy. Prom's over with. We're not really buying it for the next season. So summer is the time to relax. So we get to enjoy summer and stuff. So especially with the kids, you know, now we're kind of enjoying that next project of, you know, being parents to toddlers. So you know, we'll see. Ask us in 5 years.
Somebody else have a question? I was thinking of something as you were talking. No, I don't remember what it was. Just go with. So, is there anything so far that you haven't been asked about that you'd like to talk about to the audience here?
We've covered a lot.
Yeah. You know, Derek and I talked a little bit about what this would be like coming and speaking with everyone, and you know, personally, I was really flattered that we would have an interesting enough story to share. And one of the things that we talked about was, you know, what is our story? I think we have a hard time putting it into words sometimes, and I think one really cool thing that we thought about was this idea of, you know, don't wait for it to be perfect, just start. And I think that can get you really far as an entrepreneur. You know, be smart about it, come up with a decent idea that you feel great about, and try it, see how it goes. You don't have to have everything figured out from the beginning, and you can figure it out as you go.
But also measure that risk. it doesn't have to be a $500,000 launch, or it doesn't have to be a, I'm gonna be the next PayPal, or I'm not gonna do something. It's gonna be, take reasonable risks, and I know, Stacy, we met during some of those other smaller meetings, what were those called again?
Startup Zoo.
Startup Zoo. And that was sometimes a frustration of mine when I would hear folks that were interested, ready to start a business or excited to start a business. And it's like, I'm gonna be the next, whatever, I don't know, I'm gonna start a Fox News Network or something like that. Well, are you in the TV business? Well, no. Well, why don't we start small? Start doing something along that line and, grow into that. So I think that's, that can take you a long ways as well, so.
I have another question.
I do have a question. You say you've been 11 years now. How has the rise and fall of the economy, what does that do to your business? How does that affect what you do, and how does that affect your sales? What has the economy done to you or for you?
They say that the wedding industry and the death industry are recession-proof, and we've seen quite a bit of that in action. We were very fortunate and didn't see big dips as the economy ebbed and flowed. Part of it might have been because we were still pretty new, so we were sort of on a natural growth curve anyways. But it is nice for our business is because there are some certain things that people still want to celebrate and still are okay with spending money on, and one of those is weddings. Now, one trend coming up is people not getting married to the extent that they did many, many years ago, so that could change things going forward in the future. But we've been very fortunate that we haven't had to deal with giant economic issues. I think the biggest issue plaguing our industry right now is issues with online purchases, especially counterfeiters. That's a big thing with our bridal industry right now, is competing with people making very poor copies of designer dresses and selling them at a fraction of the cost, and unfortunately the customers don't know what they're getting until the day before their event. Their dress shows up and it's nothing like that they expected, but that was a sale that we lost.
Put it on, the sleeves come off.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been a big thing with our industry.
I guess my other question was if, as far as giving back to the community, because you were kind of talking about it, Derek, like when you were at Startup Zoo, but that was, haven't you helped other, isn't that part of what you do, the mentoring anyways?
A bit, yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Probably not very well. I've done some mentoring in the past, yeah, but not, nothing current.
But you are very involved in the community as a whole.
Sure.
Maybe just not with other startup businesses.
Sure. I'm sorry. Is that the question? Yeah, I'm involved with other organizations and boards and whatnot. So very active in downtown issues. So I'm on the DDA downtown and DKI, and I also sit on the City Planning Commission. So I like to. We annually set kind of goals for what we want our year to look like. What do we want to accomplish over the course of the year, and what types of things do we want to be able to look back and say that we did that year. Coming up at the end of 2016, what did we do? I like to run. One of the things is I want to run a marathon. Every year I run a marathon, so that's in there. I can look back and say, yep, I ran a marathon. One of the things is I'm active in the community, and I'm looked at as a leader in my community. That's important to me. That's the thing I value. So so I try to make steps to do that. Being a good father, that's important to me, and that's something that we put in our annual goals, and we try to make strides as we're doing that, and make efforts to do that. We put financial goals in our annual our annual goal planning or whatnot. Where do we want to be? Where do we want to keep our expenses at? Those types of things. So I think it's important to be able to just, or else you don't want to get too focused into business or too focused into one thing or another. How do you want yourself to look beforehand, and then kind of map that out, and then kind of check back and see how you're doing. So.
Do you find that those relationships, either doing the Cinderella project or being involved in the organizations that you talked about for the city, do you find that those help with your business too, and just like?
I'm not sure if it's relevant financially. It's just what we want to do. It's what's important to us. We want to be able to provide, memorable experiences to brides. We want to be part of people's, big days. We want to be able to provide for our family. We want to be able to be a meaningful part of the community. So those things are all things that are important to us. I'm sure they help, one way or the other. They all kind of mix, but
I like the sense of the goodwill that the Cinderella project brings to memories. It's just nice being able to do something for the community, and people associate that with your business. It's not something that we do to bring in business, but it's great to be able to look at a business and know that they care. We're not the only business that does stuff like that, but I think it's a really cool thing, and I think people look for that nowadays. That there's more to the business than just making money for themselves.
Yeah, it gives more of a three-dimensional quality. Like it's not just a storefront. There's people involved in it. So, for our last question, do you see anything that's missing in Kalamazoo, especially for entrepreneurs?
Like resources for entrepreneurs, is that what you're thinking, or
Anything?
opportunities?
Any of the above?
I don't know, but Kalamazoo is a great community to start a business in. Kalamazoo, I really like Kalamazoo because it's big enough to have a lot of resources, but it's small enough to be very accessible. You can sit down and meet with just about anybody in Kalamazoo, and that's pretty cool. And having lived in some larger cities and whatnot, that's not the case in many places. I don't know about specific, business opportunities that would be really good right now, but or specific resources, but just the Kalamazoo community as a whole, I think, is very conducive for entrepreneurship. So.
We're very heavily involved and invested in downtown Kalamazoo, but it's so great seeing the support that businesses get when they're located in downtown and other places we've been. I can't imagine anyone else other than ourselves caring so much about our business. So that's something we've been very fortunate to be able to take advantage of, and it's a great help to businesses just getting started. That support from other members of the community is fantastic.
So if we wanted to find you, if we wanted to find the store on the website, where would we look? Like, what's the web
What's our
address?
website?
Yeah.
It's dressedlikeyou.com.
Okay. So is there, making one final request, any other questions?
Do I have to go over there?
No.
So in the wedding industry, there's a lot of different vendors that work to make that day happen. How much do you work with other vendors? Like, how much do you feed their business? How much do they feed yours?
We are one of the first steps in the wedding planning process. I think if you're actually looking at the wedding vendors, people will buy an engagement ring, and then the next step is they'll figure out their venue and buy a dress. So we're pretty early on that route. So We do like to have good relationships with other vendors, and that probably helps them more than it helps us, because we can refer people to them. We pass out bridal packets to every bride that comes into our store, and if we have a great relationship with a certain vendor and know that they're going to take good care of those brides, that's something that we can specifically refer to those customers. The wedding industry, especially the local environment, is actually pretty small and close knit. So you do get to know a lot of the other providers, and that it helps quite a bit. So I think it's a great industry to be in. It's fun to work with the different vendors. You're not just stuck in your own world. And I think there are a lot of great partnership opportunities that we don't take advantage of just because we have so much going on. But I think in the right environment, you could really leverage those to make an amazing business by working with the other people in that industry, but not specifically within your competition.
Was there anything else that either of you wanted to add? No? Okay. How about a round of applause? Thanks,
Thank you very much.